The Red Kite, Chapter 3 of the book Betel Nuts and Other Stories by Simeon G. Silverio, Jr. It was the summer of 1956, the kite season in Simeon's neighborhood on Pepin Street in Sampaloc, Manila. Neighborhood boys flew their kites on the corner of Laong Lan and Pepin Streets. The large intersection offered much wider space and broader access to the sky. The most common, but not necessarily most desired kites, were the ready-made ones sold for 10 cents each at the corner sari-sari store owned by Beho, a Chinese man. They were made of thin, colored paper called papel de hapon, Japanese paper, pasted on a thin bamboo frame. Those who didn't have 10 cents, which was quite beyond the reach of most boys at that time, had to make kites of their own using old newspapers. Occasionally, some kids would make an extra-large kite called a gurion. A gurion was so large the string connecting the kite had to be extra thick. The force of the air pushing up on a gurion was so strong it would break a regular thread. A regular kite with the thick string would have difficulty soaring high up in the sky. Small boys like Simeon, however, did not have the skill to fly a regular kite. Hence, they made a boca, a kite made of a piece of regular-sized bond paper, which was folded twice on both sides and attached with strings. Flying it was difficult. The small boys had to run while holding the long string of the boca. Once they stopped running, the boca would cease to soar and fall on the ground. The small boys did not tire of running back and forth on the street as long as their boca would go up. Seeing it soar was thrilling enough for them. The older boys, however, got a thrill not only from flying their kites high, but also from competing to see which kite had sharper thread. Sharpening a thread involved several steps. First, a used light bulb was placed inside a can and crushed into grainy pieces by pounding it with a stone pestle. A cup of starch together with the pieces of the light bulb were then placed in a big can of boiling water. The concoction was continuously stirred and then cooled off. The thread was then strung to several posts like a clothesline. The cooled mixture was applied on the thread. The thread was rolled into an empty milk can once it dried up and was then ready to use. The kite with the sharpened thread would then be ready for combat. 2 kites were flown in the competition. Once high enough, both flyers would try to make the strings of the kites touch each other. If there was contact, the competitors would unravel more string and make the kites soar higher. In the dogfight, the kite with a sharper thread would win, cutting the other string and releasing the losing kite into the sky. Upon contact, if one pulled his string instead of letting it go, his string would likely break and he would lose the competition. The kite with the broken thread would fly up and eventually fall on the ground. The boys would go after it, following it from one street to another and try to snatch it once it was low enough. The one who got it would get the kite for himself. That was the unwritten rule of the game. That summer, a red kite flown by Buning was earning quite a reputation as a perennial winner. Buning was a 13-year-old whose father, Mang Gustin, was the handyman of Simeon's grandmother. They belonged to the Visayan clan living in the middle of Pepin Street. A lady called Aling Yayang was their matriarch. Later on, when he was in his 20s, Buning became a ranger in the army and was killed in Mindanao during a raging war with Muslim rebels in the 1970s. Buning's red kite had already notched up 7 victories, breaking the previous summer's record of 5. Almost everybody was afraid to compete with him. They would rather compete against each other than against Buning. His latest victory went to Buning's head, however. He became arrogant, mocking his defeated competitor openly. "Go back to your house in Dos Castillas," he told him, referring to the street 4 blocks away. "There is no way you can beat me." The insult didn't sit well with the boy's younger brother, who vowed to get even. The brother, a dorky 10-year-old, came back a week later with a kite on hand and challenged Buning. The news spread like a wildfire. The neighborhood boys trooped to the corner of Long Lan and Pepin Street to witness the battle of the kites. Finally, somebody was willing to compete against Buning. Buning was cocky. It may seem like a token challenge since the boy didn't look like a formidable opponent, but beating him would enable Buning to notch his record-breaking 8th victory. "I am going to beat you," the brash 10-year-old challenger taunted Buning. Buning was determined to teach the young kid a lesson. He was like Muhammad Ali when he carried former champion Floyd Patterson through several rounds before knocking him out. Patterson had insisted on calling him his given name of Cassius Clay, not his adopted Muslim moniker. It angered Muhammad Ali. Buning didn't have any difficulty flying his red kite. In an instant, it soared high. The challenger failed to do the same. It took him a while before he was able to fly his kite as high as Buning's. When their strings touched, Buning arrogance prevailed. He pulled away. He maneuvered his kite through several moves, letting it soar upward by pulling back the string and soar downward and up again by pulling the string in a circular motion. When the strings touched the second time, he did the same. He planned to execute the kill the third time around. However, his kite dipped too low on the third try, and it went under an electric wire. When it went up, it again dipped under the same wire, completely entangling the string. Buning panicked. He didn't know what to do since it was the first time it happened to him. In his anxiety, he pulled the string hard enough to break it. Everyone was shocked. The red kite continued to fly, its string entangled in the wire. At long last, Buning lost. The dorky boy with eyeglasses found himself the winner, defeating the 7-time champion and frustrating his attempt for an 8th record-breaking win. Buning was too shocked to say anything as he looked up at his soaring kite. He could not do anything but watch, since it was already beyond his control. The new champion brought down his own kite and walked back home together with his cheering companions. It was their turn to mock Buning. They took the imaginary championship crown from Pepin Street and brought it home to their street in Dos Castillas. Through the rest of the afternoon and early evening, Buning and some boys kept looking at the red kite, waiting for the wind to die down and for the kite to fall to the ground or fly down within their reach. But it did not. "Buning, it's time to eat," his sister called. His family was calling him home for supper. One by one, the rest of the boys got their respective supper calls, until no one was left to watch over the kite. As he laid in bed that evening, Simeon was still thinking about the red kite. It was still a champion kite, he thought, for it did not actually lose the competition, but lost on a technicality. He was fantasizing he would wake up early the next morning and try to retrieve the kite before anybody else could wake up and do so. Once he got the magical kite, he would fly it himself, compete against other boys, and become the new champion. He was deep into this revelry when suddenly thunder roared and a downpour of rain came down. He uttered a loud scream. "Oh no," he cried. "What happened?" His mother came and asked him. Embarrassed, he meekly answered, "Nothing. It's just the rain. It's just the rain pouring down." He did not tell her about the red kite getting wet and destroyed by the rain. She would not understand. And that closes the book on this matter. Subscribe to this channel to listen to more enjoyable stories like this. This is episode 3 of the YouTube channel, our Life and Times audiobooks. Betel Nuts and Other Stories is published by Papyrus Books with email address papyrusbooks@yahoo.com. To order a copy of the book, go to amazon.com and enter the name of the author, Simeon Silverio, in the browser.